The most outdated concept is to go to school, acquire a job, work hard, save money, get out of debt, and invest for the long term in the stock market. Why would you save money when they are printing trillions of dollars? The difference between 1% and 99% is huge. You see, it's not just about money. You need to take a step back and look at the larger picture. So, what do? Every one of us had a poor person, and I still have a poor person inside of me. There is also a middle-class individual who seeks stability and a consistent wage. And there is a rich individual. Except for that, they are all inside of us. It is not taught. You're taught to go to school, obtain a job, and earn a salary. Not taught how to earn money. If you've read Affluent Dad, Poor Dad, you'll know that my affluent father refused to pay me. He claimed that the paycheck was one of the most destructive things you could take in your life. He adds that the moment you accept a paycheck, you are an employee, and that is the attitude. So my wealthy father never paid me. It drove my poor father, a government employee, crazy. You got to pay people, you got to pay people. And Rich Dad didn't say the salary was poor. He said he didn't want to be a slave to money. So, as an entrepreneur, if Rich Dad fails, I'll just try another firm. I don't need a paycheck. I don't need somebody to look after myself. If my government doesn't like me, I'll relocate to another nation where they need entrepreneurs. So the entrepreneur is more than just the business. It is also the attitude, skill sets, and set of norms. You see, I do not operate a tiny firm, which does not follow the same standards as a large corporation. Entrepreneurship is first and foremost an attitude, followed by a set of skills and regulations. And the regulations are different for employees and small businesses, as are the mindsets and skill sets. What would you tell someone who has never been an entrepreneur and is considering taking the leap of faith to become one? Okay, I'll simply tell them what happened to me. You know, my last paycheck. I still remember it vividly. It was one of the worst and best days of my life. And I was in Puerto Rico, working for Xerox, when my boss gave me my last. It wasn't a paycheck, it was a bonus check. And I believe it was about $30,000 taxable. That's the only problem with it. So I got this check, and I said, holy mackerel. You know, I was both excited and disturbed. So this other man comes up to me. His name is John. And he says to me, "You're going to be back." I said, "Why?" He replied, "Because you're going to fail." I glanced at him and said, "Look, a few expletives," because that's what he did. He left Xerox, failed, and came back. I thought to myself, look, you fail and you came back, but I'm going to fail and I'm never coming back. And that's the mindset. You understand what I mean? You'll act accordingly if you say to yourself, well, if I fail, I'll go back to mommy and daddy. I therefore became an entrepreneur because I had no money if I failed. I was broke for years. Yes, I was without a paycheck. However, my wealthy father pushed me in that direction. He claims that when you don't have this paycheck, you become more intelligent and hungry, and it's a test of your moral fiber. Will you turn into a crook? Will you start being untruthful? Will you steal and cheat? Or will you develop into a more respectable person? That's actually the advantage of being an entrepreneur. You discover your true self when you have nothing. Thus, you must always consider the wider picture. Far too many individuals ask themselves, well, what's going to happen to me? When you consider the larger perspective, you will also realize that good things always come from negative things. However, you must get ready for whatever is ahead. You're going to lose a lot of money if you believe that the next 20 years will be like the previous 20. You know, every time you and I purchase a carton of milk at the grocery store, we make sure to check the expiration date. However, the majority of people don't make sure their minds are up to date. I incurred debt rather than paying it off. I just made a fortune by refinancing a $300 million debt, reducing the interest rate from 5% to 2.5%. My cost of money has decreased. Thus, every month I receive more money. Therefore, although some financial experts advise getting out of debt, I advise learning how to leverage debt. See, my wealthy father told me to enroll in real estate investing classes as soon as I returned from my service in Vietnam in January 1973. It had little to do with real estate. Rather, it was about how to exploit debt and taxes to enrich the wealthy. The poor and middle class go poorer due to debt and taxation. Thus, all the wealthy men who work as doctors, attorneys, or other professionals, you know, those guys, are getting creamed, and they have no idea why. Yes, their income has increased, but their take-home pay has decreased. My doctor just yelled at me and said, "Oh, guess what? I finally made $1 million." He was obviously thrilled. "Indeed, this was only 3 weeks ago," I said. "Yeah, well, how much do you pay in tax?" I said. "$750,000 in taxes," he remarks. Thus, he had a net worth of $400,000. That's not too awful, but I keep the $1 million I make. And the reason for that is that I don't work for pay. Check if you are taxed if you work for pay. For this reason, the first lesson in Rich Dad, the rich don't work for money, says Poor Dad. Instead, as entrepreneurs, we launch new companies. We buy property. I'm not a stock market investor. I can therefore better control my income, how much I make, and how much I pay in taxes because I am an entrepreneur. In addition, I pay no taxes because I invest in real estate and run my own business. As a result, I instantly invest any money I earn as an entrepreneur, let's say $1 million, in real estate and have a 4-to-1 jump up. I invest $1 million in real estate and the bank gives me $4 million. I adore banks because of this. It's bad, but the banks are screwing everyone else, which is excellent for me. I believed you to have stated that while printing is beneficial to you, it is detrimental to others who labor for pay, because when you print, those who work for pay get creamed and savers get creamed. Debtors become wealthy when they publish. You see, taxes and debt increase the wealth of the affluent, while decreasing the wealth of the middle class and poor. We obtain outdated results when we have outdated thoughts. For the majority of individuals, this means attending school, finding employment, putting in a lot of effort, saving money, paying off debt, purchasing a home as an asset, and making long-term investments. It is out of date. The world has altered since President Nixon removed the United States from the gold standard in 1971, at which point money became debt. What would happen if we stopped having school? Would it be preferable if there was no system of schooling at all? No, I'm suggesting that education used to be more important. It's just that it's outdated. As you may be aware, Moore's law asserts that information doubles every 18 months. To put it another way, everything is out of date by 18 months. Thus, this is a relatively new occurrence. As a result, you're already out of date when you graduate from college, which is why I'm the older guy. You know, I went to Harvard and met my friends. Yes, I attended Harvard. I replied, yeah, that was how long, 50 years ago. The banks today charge interest in order to make you save money. Put another way, because they have printed too much money, the banks don't want your money. And for that reason, there are stock market bubbles, real estate bubbles, and other bubbles. People are discarding their money. As a result, this is a relatively recent event. That's why I'm the older person. You know, I went to Harvard and made my buddies. And when you graduate from college, you're already outdated. Because as I stated previously, cash is trash and savers are losers. However, many say things like, well, I want a high-paying job. Well, that's a really old notion. Pay off your debt. This is an outdated notion. You ought to understand how to accrue debt, how to utilize debt to acquire wealth. They will also never teach you taxation. Inflation and taxation result from printing money, which is why the 1% is so high and the 99% are heading in this direction. They are being crushed by it. You will witness an unemployed economy if you believe that stable work is crucial. Your financial system. The external economy opposes yours, where you are in control versus where I am in control indeed. The distinction between an internal and exterior emphasis is known by that name. The true entrepreneur then has an internal concentration, but in the event of a setback, they look at it as an opportunity to do better. The typical individual will, collapse and declare, "Oh, I'm going to take some Prozac." If someone makes mistakes, it doesn't really matter how bad they are. Errors are important because they indicate ignorance of certain things. However, a true entrepreneur can always rise. No matter how far they fall, they are able to rise higher and get back up. That despite all that happened to them, they became happier, smarter, stronger, and better people. However, a poor internal attitude is characterized by a person's constant fear of the worst-case scenario. Individuals who are frightened of losing their jobs usually end up losing them. You understand what I mean? Certainly. So everything passes through you. Yes, effectively, The primary responsibility of an entrepreneur is to maintain control from inside, not from outside. You have to be tougher than that, because as soon as you receive that paycheck, you become an employee. Internal control is at issue.